Let us begin. A standout on the soccer field, Joe Bastianich traveled to the prep from Queens, a decision that, in his words, quote, exposed him to a world outside of Queens. Moving on to Boston College following his days at the prep, Joe followed in the family footsteps into the restaurant industry, quickly becoming one of the most renowned restaurateurs in the nation and gaining, in all honesty, international notoriety. Despite the demands on his time in helping to manage the family business, Joe has found the time to be generous to the prep with his time and his energy, hosting events and making himself available to the community in all ways. Together with his mother, Lydia, who is also an inductee this evening, Joe established the Bastianich and Friends Scholarship Fund, ensuring that other young men have the opportunity of a Fordham Prep education. Joe and his wife, Deanna, continue the Bastianich legacy at the prep as the parents of two current students, Miles, class of 2018, and Ethan, class of 2020. Father Devron and members of the Prep Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, I ask you to accept Joseph Bastianich into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
Wow. Thank you very much. Wow, what to say? Nothing. It seems like to sit here among all of you. At first, I'd like to thank, obviously, everyone for being here tonight, to come for such a momentous occasion. It's a great honor to be nominated, and I'll tell you a little bit about why that is. I'd like to thank the nominating committee and all the people who make these very, very difficult and important decisions on who to induct. But I would say that so many years later, to be standing here and accepting an honor like this into a school, or what represents such an important part of my life, and something that really kind of, in real, we say that, men for others and what a school can do for you, but I would probably emphatically tell you, and probably a lot of you in this room realize, and I was talking to some of my classmates tonight who were sharing some memories, how impactful a place like Fordham Prep can be. And I had many great experiences in my life, including going to Boston College and various other things. But I think that probably nothing so significantly changed who I am like those 4 years that I spent there as a young guy coming over from Queens on a short bus driven by Jack Sullivan, and with my fellow Queens bus riders like Mark Flamino, who's here with me tonight, who I share this honor with because he deserves it too. And nothing. It's just, without getting really into it, you guys know, those of you who went there, those of you who touched the prep, who see the impact it has on people's lives, and how that can really change the world. And it's a place that makes people better. It made people better back in the 80s and 90s, and then I met a guy named Chris Devron a couple of years ago who kind of, in his own way, wrangled me back in the fold, which I'm thankful and happy to be, because my experience in working with Chris and whatever we were able to do for the prep and these scholarship funds was an amazing experience in and of itself. But I don't need to sell the fact of how important a place it is, how significantly it impacts these young guys, because I see two guys named Miles and Ethan sitting at the table next to me, and I see the effect it has with them, and I know them pretty well, so I know that the tradition continues. What we can do to support it is incredible. Those hallowed halls lay roots for young boys to go out and become people that change the world in their own ways, not only in the true Jesuit mantra of men for others, but also as decent human beings who learn to relate to other people from different cultures, from all over the tri-state areas, and become people who can be functional, can be productive, who can be sympathetic, kind, and productive in a very, very difficult world. So I thank Fordham Prep for having that effect on me personally. Why I stand here before you, I thank it for the effect that it has on two guys that I know who are going through the experience right now. And as I look around the room, I'm sure there's many more people who have been affected in this great way that I and my two sons have. So thank you so much for this honor. Thank you for having me tonight, and thanks everyone for supporting me.
Lydia Bastianich, a parent of the class of 1985, grandparent of the classes of 2018 and 2020, embodies in every way what it means to be a Fordham Prep parent. An Italian immigrant to this nation, Lydia settled with her family in Long Island City and grew up working part-time in bakeries and pizzerias, showing a work ethic and commitment to quality that has never waned. In 1966, she married Felice Bastianich, and 5 years later, they would open their first restaurant together in Forest Hills. Lydia raised 2 children, Joe and Tanya, while also expanding the family restaurant business, operating Felidia's, Becco, and Del Posto. When her son Joe arrived at the Prep, Lydia would become a member at-large of the Prep's Mothers Club, lending her time and talent and recipes to many events. Lydia's generosity would expand beyond the Prep to include work with UNICEF, UNICEM, and the Lydia Maticcio Bastianich Foundation. Together with her son Joe, Lydia would also help to establish the Bastianich and Friends Scholarship Fund at the Prep. Father Devron and members of the Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, I ask you to accept Lydia Bastianich into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
Thank you. I'm going to be really very brief because I thought Joe said it all, and he did a great job. But let me just, I'm very honored, I'm very grateful to be here and to receive this honor. I don't see too many women on that roster, so I feel very good about it. But being a young mom and having just begun an industry, a really tough industry, restaurant business is a tough business. My husband and I, we put everything that we had into that little business, and we just, had to stay those 12 hours, 16 hours. And I always say that I had there were 3 corners to raising my children. And my husband and I were one corner. My mother, Erminia, who's there, grandma, 97, it was the other corner. And the Jesuits, the education that they received under the Jesuits' guidance, it made me feel comfortable. I knew that my children were receiving that part, maybe that in the time that I didn't have. That they were that's sort of spiritual, emotional, human element that this provides, this settings provide. Now I must say that my daughter, she went to Loyola, so my son Fordham, my son BC, my daughter Georgetown. I have presently 2 grandchildren that you heard at the Prep. One young one, a Loyola freshman, Tanya. Olivia is a sophomore at BC. And the son, Tanya's son, Regis, and on to, actually he's in Harvard. So I am very grateful because I had a team. I had a team that left me comfortable as a woman, as a mother, in my place of work, because I knew between my mother at home putting them to bed and the next morning the bus taking them to school under good guidance, I feel good. And I think I was blessed with great results. And I thank the Jesuits community as a whole, and I wish everybody my fondest gratitude for being here today. Congratulations to all the other nominees. And I wasn't going to say much, so I'm leaving now.
Timothy J. Brosnan grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, the son of Irish immigrants. Despite a closer proximity, growing up in Stuyvesant Town, Tim shunned Xavier on 16th Street for Fordham Prep arriving in September of 1972. Tim would attend Georgetown, where he'd play on the baseball team, and would later earn a law degree at Fordham. In 1987, he married Claire O'Brien. Tim practiced law in Manhattan and was appointed early on to the New York State Commission on Government Integrity by Mario Cuomo under the fine guidance of our friend Dean John Ferrick. While on the commission, Tim commented to some fellow attorneys, I am told, that he still dreamed of a career in baseball. One of them put Tim in touch with a contact at Major League Baseball, and in 1991, he joined MLB's business team. His tenure at MLB was nothing short of spectacular. Under his direction, MLB launched the MLB Network and the World Baseball Classic. International revenues rose sixfold during his tenure. Throughout his busy career, Tim consistently observed the call to others. He has served on the boards of the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, the De La Salle Academy, Georgetown University, and of course, the Prep. Tim is a father to Kevin, Helen, and Charlotte. Kevin graduated from the Prep in 2012, where Tim gave the commencement address. Father Devron and members of the Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor and Nominating Committee, I ask you to accept Timothy Che Brosnan into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much. Okay. I'll put that here. Okay. Is there any way you can go back to that picture for a second? Okay. All right. So when they put this picture out to nominate me, I was like, Devron punked me. This is a roast. This isn't the Hall of Honor. I mean, I think I was still like channeling Mick Jagger there, but I clearly missed the mark. To my fellow honorees and their families, I offer you my sincerest congratulations. To the trustees of Fordham Prep, to the nominating committee, to Father Devron, the faculty, the staff, thank you for everything that you do for all of us, for the family of Fordham Prep. And to my family, Claire, Helen, Kevin, and Charlotte, who's down at school, down at Georgetown, I'm going to borrow a gesture from Sammy Sosa that I've used before. So as the holidays commence, we're bombarded with sales and promotions. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, buy one, get one. But easily the one that I believe is the most effective, that the marketers really nailed it on, is the friends and family sale. After all, what could be more special than friends and family, a sale limited to friends and family? Who's going to get the best price other than friends and family? It's what we all value the most, friends and family. Well, our experience at Fordham taught us, it actually showed us, that while we should aspire to be men and women for others, that path was not a solitary path, that it was one pursuit that could have been much more and would be much more joyful if you pursued it with friends and family and achieved it in partnership with friends and family. And while I wasn't quite wise enough at Fordham Prep to understand it, I now have the years of experience that make me understand that truth. So tonight, with my friends, my older friends, and shout out to the 2012 guys, my younger friends, with my friends and family, I have proof that Fordham Prep had it right. I know to a dead certainty that this honor that I accept tonight was actually earned not by me alone, but by all of us, by all these friends and family. Thank you so much.
A basketball standout from St. Gabriel's Parish in Riverdale, Jack Garrity came to Fordham Prep in the fall of 1956, a star in the classroom and on the court. He would twice be awarded the Silver Academic Excellence Medal, and would garner all-city honorable mention for basketball his senior year. In 1960, Jack would accept an appointment to the United States Naval Academy. Upon graduation, his first duty assignment was to the Tonkin Gulf in 1964. He would subsequently serve on the West Coast, in Newport, Rhode Island, and in Pearl Harbor, before returning to Vietnam in 1969, where, as the executive officer for a river patrol boat unit in the Mekong Delta, he was awarded the Bronze Star. Following his active duty, Jack earned his MBA at the University of Virginia and began a 30-year career in the financial services industry, mostly for Credit Suisse First Boston. For 20 years, Jack served as the chairman of the Service Selection Committee for the New Jersey 5th Congressional District, and most recently he has served on the Prep Board of Trustees as the chairman of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, and currently serves as the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey. Jack and his wife, Marge, have been married for over 45 years. Their daughter, Elizabeth, is a graduate of Holy Cross. As many of his friends and classmates from 1960 have noted, there are few more worthy of being honored with induction into the Hall of Honor than Jack Garrity. Father Devron and members of the Prep Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, I ask you to accept Jack Garrity into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
I'd like to thank the Hall of Honor Committee and the trustees for this honor tonight. Michael, I was on this podium for 5 times, so I understand how the deal works. I grew up in St. Gabriel's Parish in Riverdale. The big sport there was basketball in the church playground. The best player at that time was Donnie Walsh, who was going to Fordham Prep, so I thought that might be a good place to go to school. And it was. The Prep, as I say, was a great place, a fabulous place to go to school in the late 50s. We were on a college campus. We played basketball in a college gym, which was much bigger than those bandboxes that everybody played in Bronx and Manhattan. It was worth about 10 points in the first half. Guys would walk out, stare at this gym and go, and we really, took them to task. I had a great time. We had a really good group in my section, the Greek honors section, delighted in pulling stunts on teachers. I'll give you one story, the mite box caper. Remember mite boxes? You put little coins in them and lint, and one teacher used to take the mite boxes and just go like this, crash them together. Well, what we did was put a little sand in the mite boxes, and the preacher went boom, sand all over the place. Anyway, I got applied to the Naval Academy, a little help from basketball. I had little money for college, and I was really lucky to get in there, and it was a real culture shock. Believe me, plebe year is something that you don't want to do twice. But that changed my life, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. As Michael mentioned, after graduation, I picked up a ship in Vietnam. That's when the whole Tonkin Gulf thing started. I was right there. But when I came back, I lived in San Diego, and I had a snake ranch, which was what bachelors had, right on the beach in San Diego. Whoa, it was great. I drove a convertible, considered myself a very successful bachelor. Night steaming, San Diego, na 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 na. It was fabulous. I'm not sure the prep prepared me for that, but anyway. Afterwards, as Michael mentioned, I went to Newport, Rhode Island, went to Pearl Harbor. Remember, I still had the convertible. Worked even better in Hawaii. So in 1968, I received orders to Vietnam, deployed in January of 69. I was actually over River Division, We had 62 men, 10 PBRs. You ever seen the movie Apocalypse Now? That's what I did. We originally checked river traffic, in other words, people crossing from one side to the other, but later on, that evolved to conducting night ambush, which is exactly what you think it is. You see them first, you shoot them, etc. My unit suffered about 30% casualties over a particularly difficult 3-month period. I also lost 2 men over that year and was tasked with writing the letters home to the wives and families of the deceased, a rather sobering experience for a 26-year-old. And I got the Bronze Star, as Michael mentioned, which was very nice of him to do so. After active duty, I went to MBA from the University of Virginia, was in the financial business, was on TV a lot. I mean, with that guy, Jim Cramer. Everybody seen Cramer? He's really crazy. He really is. I was lucky to marry my wife, Marge, in '72, and we have one daughter, Elizabeth, who's a graduate of Holy Cross and works in New York City, lives in New York City, keeps her daddy in line. I have 3 quick final thoughts. 1, a chance for a young man, and a couple of others have mentioned this. You tonight are here helping out a young man who you don't know. You're preparing him to go to Fordham Prep to get a head start in life simply because you're contributing tonight to the scholarship fund. And that young man will thank you even though you don't know him. But believe me, it's important. Secondly, the Marines are looking for a few young men. Remember that thing was on TV a couple of years ago? My class in 1960 sent 2 to the Naval Academy and 3 to West Point. I think the prep will continue to be, hopefully, a source of a few good men for our armed services. And finally, and a couple of other men have mentioned this, classmates. After 57 years, my class still gets together for lunch in the fall and the spring. There's no better way to say you have good classmates than that. Here's my last thought. It's from the late Bruce Bott, class of 1959, a prep teacher, administrator, and left-handed quarterback, and a member of the Hall of Honor. It is this, and I quote, "My wish for you today is this. Someday, when you are old, you can look back on choices well made, secure in the knowledge of having been a good husband and a good father, successful in your chosen profession, and a proud graduate of Fordham Prep." Bruce, up in heaven, I feel exactly that way tonight. God bless you. God bless the students, faculty, and graduates of Fordham Prep, and God bless our beloved country, the United States of America. Thank you.
Kevin Hackett, class of 1967, has personified the St. Ignatius call to be a man for others throughout his life and his career. As a student at the Prep from 1964 to 1967, Kevin found the time between his studies and swim practice to be active in the Prep's Christian Action Group and the 4ATS program, a tutoring program for the local grammar school students and a forerunner to the HAP and REACH programs. Upon graduating from the Prep, Kevin headed to Boston College, or to Boston, where he would attend Boston College, and would then cross the Charles River to attend Harvard Law School. Following law school, he would serve as a captain in the Army, and then return to New York to continue his legal career. Kevin's career would span both the legal and the business worlds in New York. He spent time at Milbank Tweed and Sherman and Sterling, and in 2004, he was made CEO of the Rockefeller Group before joining Proskauer Rose, where he still works. Throughout all, Kevin has continued to dedicate himself to a life of service. In addition to serving as chairman of the Prep Board of Trustees, Kevin also does extensive pro bono work, most notably in support of the Veterans Assistance Project. This past summer, Kevin's colleagues recognized his pro bono work as well-deserved. In 1983, Kevin married Consuelo Elizabeth Reese, and together they offer their support to Cristo Rey in New York, where they were recently recognized for their charitable efforts. Father Devron and members of the Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, I ask that you accept Kevin Hackett into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
In preparing my brief remarks tonight, I wanted to tell you all what the most important thing was that I learned at the prep. And it was that the poor have a preferential option, and that the poor can be found, as Francis says, on the periphery. And I've learned through my life that the periphery is not all that far away. This notion of service on the periphery has been a very important factor in my life and has factored into many things that I've done. Most notably, it directed me to my lovely wife, Connie, who lives a life for the poor, is celebrating her 13th consecutive year as a pro bono college counselor at Cristo Rey in East Harlem. And she's out there on the periphery every day. It's so meaningful to me till now in my near dotage to carry this notion that I learned so long ago when I first came to the prep. And I came to the prep on a blustery autumn day, scared, witless. I'd read my 20 books. I was ready to go, but I came away with the notion of service. I'd be remiss if I did not point out or did not give tribute to three giants of the prep with whom I have had the privilege to work over a considerable period of time. And they all happen to be members of this august hall, to which I'm highly honored to be admitted tonight. The first is Father Ed Maloney, who tonight is with God. He invited me to consider becoming chair of the board, and it didn't take much convincing. I was very flattered, and worked with Father Ed for many, many years alongside a remarkably generous and a remarkably gentle man. And my lasting image of Father Ed is wearing a hard hat and carrying a 5-iron as he went inspecting the Leonard Theater, which was his edifice. And I just think that that's absolutely terrific. The second giant of the prep, also a member of the hall, Father Joe Parks, whom Connie and I have the privilege of knowing, not only when Father Parks succeeded Ed Maloney as president of the prep, but now with Joe firmly at the helm at Cristo Rey, New York. I see him and the wonderful work he does there, and the wonderful work all his colleagues do there, including my lovely wife, Connie. And the third giant is someone who I'm not that convincing a guy, but this guy was the guy who I convinced to succeed me as chairman of the board at Fordham Prep. He had been my vice chair, and his name is Bill Mulrow, and he's here tonight. And he carried on the tradition with Joe, and together they built up the endowment of this school, turbocharged it, got it going to on the great trajectory that it remains. And I think the world of Bill, and would be remiss not to point him out as well. Billy. And I'm just thrilled to be among the other honorees in the hall, and thank you very much.
The teaching, quote, the teaching profession is a very sacred one. S. Jerome Martin once said, "You have more power than you think." A native of Illinois and the Chicago suburbs, Samuel Jerome Jerry Martin discerned at an early age that he felt a calling to serve God in the priesthood. In 1945, he moved to Glencoe, Missouri, to attend the LaSalle Institute a formation house for the Christian Brothers. After a time, however, he realized his life's calling lay elsewhere. So he completed his education at St. Mary's College in Winona, Minnesota, graduating in 1951 with a degree in English. That year, Jerry would begin a decades-long teaching career. In 1961, he married Marilyn Pelletier, a singer. Realizing that Marilyn's best chance at a music career lay in New York, the Martins moved that summer to Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. Jerry's storied teaching career at the Prep would span nearly 35 years. He would teach social studies, religion, and mechanical drawing. But he is best known for his English classes, having taught all levels of English at the Prep, including some university courses. Mr. Martin admits that working with the wise fools of sophomore year were the best. Mr. Martin retired from Fordham Prep in 1995, but not without leaving an impression on generations of Prep students, as well as his friends, colleagues, and certainly the Prep's English department. Father Devron and members of the Prep Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, I ask you to accept S. Jerome Martin into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
Thank you all. However, I must tell you, the free person does what that person wants to do during work hours, and that what has to be done during free hours. That was my experience at Fordham Prep. I loved the classes so much, I could not wait to get to them. And they were very receptive. Wonderful, heavy with the smarts, they were. And so they really were putty in the modeler's hand, and I was the modeler. I am so grateful to the faculty who voted, the students who voted, the administration. I was so awed. I'm the only one that doesn't have any initials after his name. Did you notice that? I can tell you why, too. But I won't. Anyway, I am very grateful to be among the greats. Chuck De Palma, Frank Holbrook, Father Fahey, Jack Foley, Dennis Ahern, Don Frada. See, we had greats and have greats at Fordham Prep right now. That's why they're knocking down the doors to get in there. And they are. They're really wanting to get into Fordham Prep. And I don't blame them, because it is one of the best schools I certainly have ever been. I had Fenwick in high school, Dominican school. I had the Christian Brothers, many schools. I had Jesuits, but I'm the first non-Jesuit product they hired. If you did not teach at a Jesuit school, you were never hired at a Jesuit school in those days. And so when I was asked the question, what do you think of discipline? I said, Father, there's no teaching without discipline. He said, I like that. He hired me on the spot. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, thank you so much for electing me. I am so honored. I feel like I'm flying on the clouds. Thank you.
It is said of those with deep Fordham ties that they bleed maroon. For William Hughes Mulligan, Jr., this is especially true. It's going to be one of those nights, I suppose. You could say Bill Mulligan grew up on Rose Hill campus. For a time, his family lived on Marion Avenue in the Bronx, just a few blocks away. His father, the Venerable and Honorable William Hughes Mulligan Sr., was the dean of Fordham Law School from 1956 to 1971, and Bill spent many a day on the Rose Hill campus before coming to the prep. Bill graduated from the prep with the class of 1966, the great class of 1966, having been involved with track, tennis, and football, and a writer for Rampart. He did not go far after graduation, going to the university. And from thereafter, went to the law school in 1974, graduating, a triple Ram. In 1976, Bill made his best decision and married Mary Liz Schramm. They have 4 children: Jenny, William III, class of 1997, Kate, and Rory, class of 2002. Bill has enjoyed a successful legal career, most recently with the firm of Blakely, Platt, and Schmidt. Bill's love of the prep is matched by few, and those gathered tonight in support of Bill as a testament to all he has done for his alma mater. Father Devron and members of the Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, it is my special privilege to ask you to accept William Hughes Mulligan, Jr. into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael, and thank you all, and those guys over there. And for all you people who didn't go to the prep, and Lydia, you're right, no women have gone to the prep. Maybe that changes sometimes. But don't you get the feeling tonight, I hope you get the feeling, you understand what Fordham Prep is all about tonight. Listening to these guys and hearing the stories, Fordham Prep is the greatest secondary institution in the history of the United States and therefore the world. Just a couple of ironies. To be introduced by Michael Stanton, Jr., the letter I got in March, which stunned me that I was potentially going to be inducted. The irony is that it came from Michael K. Stanton, Jr. I don't know how many of you had the fortune of knowing his father, as Vince Scully would say, a triple threat like I am. Fordham Prep, college and law school. Mike Stanton, Sr., was one of the finest men I've ever known in my life. So that's one irony. The second irony, Pete Higgins. Summer of '67, Peter. The Hamptons. Stevie Cunyon, Mount St. Michael guy, but Freddie Height, myself. It was probably our third, I'd say a weekend, but invited to your father's place for a Sunday breakfast. Peter. Can you imagine the odds in the summer of '67 on that Sunday morning if someone had ever said, hey, guys, guess what? In 65 years, Mr. Higgins and Billy Mulligan are going to be inducted into the Fordham Prep Hall of Honor on the same night? No. That there'd be a Hall of Honor and your father be inducted, yes. That Billy Mulligan in the Hall of Honor, no. So those are two ironies I had to get out of the way pretty quick. But anyway, upon reflection over the last several months since that letter, which changed my life, it occurs to me that I have never met nor heard of the human being who has claimed to have any control whatsoever over the circumstances of their own birth, right? Let's face it. You're either lucky or you're unlucky or you're somewhere in between. Well, count me among the luckiest of the lucky. For I was born just 69 years, 3 weeks, and 2 days ago, not far from here in Union Hospital. I'm a Bronx boy. I was born to the two greatest human beings any person could ever want for a parent. My father, William Hughes Mulligan, a legend, Fordham Cathedral Prep, Fordham College, 39, Fordham Law School, 42, Dean of Fordham Law School, 56 to 71, Second Circuit, 71 to 81, the greatest after-dinner speaker of the 20th century. And then you've heard him, you know. That's no lie. All right, so lucky part number one. He married my mother, of course, the beloved Rosanna Connolly, country girl, Maybrook, New York. She was the colonel's secretary in the Counterintelligence Corps. That's where they met. They devised their own system about where they were going to meet after work. And so that happens, okay? We live blocks from here, 385 195th Street. I'd say a Bob Payne discus throw from where we stand. So how lucky there? What else? How much luckier can you get? Well, I have a sister, Ann, who's here tonight. My brother, Stephen, Prep 69. They're my two best friends, okay? So how lucky? Two greatest parents possible? Your brother and sister remain your best friends? Okay, who's lucky? See, our childhood, my sister and brother and I were here early tonight, and our youth was walking up and down Fordham Road with my Aunt Jane and my grandmother, up and down Fordham Road, through the campus, through botanical gardens. And I hear recently it's Garden. I always grew up as botanical gardens. I thought it was plural. And the Bronx Zoo with my beloved grandmother, and I said my Aunt Jane. Who could have imagined this night 70 years ago? This very place next to the campus couldn't be better. Well, it could be the Bronx Zoo, I guess. So how does the luck continue? I meet Mary Liz Schramm, as my friends have called the sainted Mary Liz. Greatest woman ever known. She somehow agreed to marry me. The luck continues. 4 children. Jenny, here. You trying to video me? Billy, Prep 97. Kate, Rory, Prep 02. You talk about lucky? Look at me, please. And let's not forget my nieces and nephews. 4 Prep graduates. Mike Hartmere, 93. Ricky Schramm, 03, one of the greatest soccer players who ever attended Fordham Prep. Patrick and Ellis Schramm. Patrick is here, recent inductee into the Fordham Prep Lacrosse Hall of Fame. With his dad, Ricky Schramm, one of my best friends. I was fortunate, just one other note of thanks. I want to thank my second grade nun, Sister Patrick Clare. I'll tell you why. Dominican nun, Adrian, Michigan, a very impressive woman. When we moved out of the Bronx, we moved to North Pelham in the early 50s. And then in 1956, we moved to Bronxville, the day after Washington's birthday. Remember when America was America? When we celebrated Lincoln's birthday on his birthday and Washington's birthday on his birthday? Well, we moved the day after that. Ann couldn't get into St. Joe, so she went to Ursuline. The only thing I was told was be in the second grade classroom, okay? So I walk into the second grade classroom, there is Sister Patrick Clare, an imposing woman. I was a little punk. She took me literally under her habit and just said, shush. A second later, the Reverend Francis Monsignor Scott walks in, an intimidating figure. She lifts up her habit, pushes me at him, and says, "Are you going to tell me we don't have room for this little boy in this classroom?" He walked away. I didn't know what was going on, but why was that a glorious moment? Why was that a life-changing moment, and why will I never forget it? Because if I didn't get into the class of '62 at St. Joseph's School to graduate in 1962, I couldn't have entered the class of 1966 at Fordham Prep. So thank you, Sister Patrick Clare. Really. And my niece, Maura, I forget, the most intelligent person I've ever known in my life. Maura Hartmere Logan, my sister's daughter, is here tonight. Thank you, Maura. I just want to get one thing straight from the start. By the way, I've been to this stage once before. Some of you may remember. My middle name is Hughes. We've all heard of Dagger John. It was established in 1936 by my father. In 1931, my father was a senior at the college, that we are collateral descendants of Dagger John himself. This is not a joke. I was asked to accept for it. No, you don't believe me? William Hughes, thank you. Dagger John, Uncle, we're here together. But not only is it a special honor for me and my class, and if I may, could my brothers just stand up for a second? Because I don't accept this award without my brothers. It's too late to take it back, Father, right? I got the message. You can't take it back for anything I say now or for being a citizen. Because as you learn at the prep, it's not about you. It's about everybody else. And I'm not here without them. And it is in that spirit that I ask, please, for just a brief moment of silence. It's going to be a double moment of silence. Please, in memory of our brothers who predeceased us, and secondly, in honor of a very special angel from our class, and that is Kristen Horgan, the daughter of Timmy Horgan and his beloved wife, Gail, who lost her valiant battle with cancer several years ago, but who is our class's special angel. Please, thank you. Thank you. And talking about the prep, and listen to Jack Garrity and all these guys, it wasn't just your class, you see. It was the guys who were in the classes ahead of you. It wasn't just you or your class. And for me to honor the hall tonight with the likes of three guys I just want to point out. Dwight Darcy, 3 years ahead of me, class of '63. One of the finest men, the best lawyers, and greatest people who ever lived, who also lost his life on 9/11. And I am blessed, and we are all blessed tonight by the presence of his wife, Veronica, and his son, Ryan, here tonight. John Briones, I was here several years ago when John was inducted into this hall. John Briones, the Greek god, as we all know him. Higgins and Lund know him. Petey Schmergy know him, of course, they played ball together. The greatest all-around athlete who ever attended Fordham Prep, and I defy anyone to contradict that. Football Hall of Fame at Holy Cross in our Hall of Honor. Navy pilot, John's in a home in Georgia, battling multiple sclerosis as only John Briones could. He acts as if there's nothing wrong with him. I spoke with him Monday, and as always, our conversations end with, I love you, John. I love you too, Billy. The Greek god. Just to be in the same hall with the Dwight Darcy and the John Briones. Then there's another guy from the class of '64. See, this is what Fordham Prep is all about. How about Bobby Murray? If Bobby Murray were to walk in here tonight, he'd look at the list, he'd look up at me and say, "Who are you?" But then he'd say, "Oh, wait, you were that skinny little freshman who used to get on the train at Bronxville a stop or two after me. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you were all right." But see, that's what it was. He was an upperclassman. You sure knew you weren't going to be a wise guy with a kid who was 2 years older than you. It was always a smile and a wink. Flash forward to 1968. Bob Murray graduates from Fordham and is accepted at the Harvard Business School. Remember, there were no guaranteed deferments for graduate school in those days, but he might well have received one. So what does Bob Murray do? Quotes. Well, he enlisted. Why? Quotes. "I think I can make a difference." He sure did. How? Asked the members of his squad in Vietnam on June 7th, 1970. As most of my classmates were graduating from college and getting ready for whatever. He was a squad leader with a company searching for an enemy mortar that had been threatening friendly positions when a member of the squad tripped an enemy grenade rigged as a booby trap. Realizing that he had activated the enemy booby trap, the soldier shouted for everyone to take cover. What would you have done? I don't know what I would have done. But we know what Bobby Murray did. He dove on it. I guess he made a difference, didn't he? Well, our government thought so. Congressional Medal of Honor. What's my point? That's what Fordham Prep is all about. Where else do I meet a Dwight Darcy, a John Vrionis, or a Bobby Murray? This is a special place. And for my name to be mentioned in the same breath as any one of them is the honor of my life. So just to end up here, I don't want any of you who didn't know me before tonight think, "Oh, his father was dean of the law school. He must have been a goody-goody." Right? Never got in trouble. None of that. In fact, and to be clear, it's too late. You can't take this back from me now, right, Fawn? I hope that I may be the first, and I hope I'm the last inductee into the Hall of Honor who was actually not invited to graduate with his class. As I said, my father, dean of the law school, the scheduled commencement speaker. My mother was real happy. I can still hear her plea. I'm not sure up until the moment she died that she ever knew that I was standing 6 feet in back of her when I heard her plaintive call to Father O'Brien, and I can still hear it. And I'm not knocking him because I repeated this at my mother's eulogy at her funeral, and Father O'Brien was sitting on the 6th row, and I looked at him. I can still hear her. "But Father, Billy is a good boy." It didn't work. I got my diploma the next day with 3 other Irishmen. But in closing, I'll just say this. Ma, we didn't make it to graduation, but we're in the Hall of Honor. I'll take it. Thank you.
I'm going to let you keep that.
Thank apparently the nominating committee will be taking up Sister Mary Claire in our next one. Patrick Clare, there we go. Give me some time, all right? The education career of Reverend Joe Parks of the Society of Jesus is one that has spanned nearly 6 decades, several countries, and has seen him become one of the foremost school administrators in the Society of Jesus. Father Parks is a native of Jersey City, New Jersey. The son of Irish immigrants, he began his Jesuit training as a student at St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City. By the time he graduated in 1962, he knew his life's calling was to remain with the Jesuits, entering the novitiate that same year. He would be ordained at the University Church at Fordham on June 12, 1976. In 1979, the Jesuits would call upon Father Parks to lead his alma mater, St. Peter's. He would serve as president there until 1986. Father Parks was then appointed provincial of the New York province. In 1996, the Jesuits would ask him to lead another Jesuit high school nearby, Fordham Prep. During his tenure at the Prep, Father Parks would oversee the updating of the Prep's facilities, untouched since 1972. He would pay off the debt incurred in the construction of the Leonard Theater and would grow the endowment from $1 million to over $10 million. He would also lead the Prep community through the 9/11 tragedy. Following his successful tenure at the Prep, Father Parks was called upon to serve as the first president of Cristo Rey, New York, the first of the Cristo Rey network of schools in New York. There, he has helped lead the school through its founding to become one of the most successful schools for the underserved youth in New York. His tenure there concludes this year after nearly 15 years. Father Devron and members of the Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Hall of Honor Nominating Committee, I ask you to accept the Reverend Joseph P. Parks of the Society of Jesus into the Fordham Preparatory School Hall of Honor.
Thank you all very much. It is indeed an honor to be here this evening and to accept this award. Thanks to Mike and the committee and Chris and the board and the faculty and staff. I spent 8 great years at Fordham Prep. They were a very significant part of my life. It was an honor to work under board chairs Kevin Hackett, Bill Morrow, and Jim Murray. They were great leaders and provided great support as we went through some issues that were not always easy to face, but we faced them fearlessly and came through them, I think, quite well. I'm a firm believer in institutions, and it's been a real honor for me as a Jesuit scholastic. I taught at the Ateneo de Manila High School. That school had been destroyed in the Second World War. It was rebuilt in the early 1950s, and if any of you have a chance to visit Manila, you will see the largest, greatest Jesuit campus in the world, with a grade school for boys that has 4,800 students, a high school that's now co-ed that has about 6,000 students, and a university altogether has about 20 students with its new med school and law school downtown. I then served at St. Peter's Prep, my alma mater, and at Fordham Prep, schools that began in 1872 and in 1841. So when I was asked to head up Cristo Rey, this new venture in East Harlem, after the first couple of days, I began to think about what was it like for the people who founded Fordham Prep in 1841 and St. Peter's Prep in 1872. It's not easy to start a new school, I can assure you that. But one of the reasons I think we've been so successful at Cristo Rey New York High School is because of the Fordham Prep alumni and their families. Because without soliciting them, I was pretty conscious about that. I didn't want to steal the list. Unasked, multiple people contributed to the school and helped us to get positions. Our students work 1 day a week. And it was a clear example to me that Fordham Prep does not only turn out professionals, but true professionals for others. And one of my hobbies when I worked at Fordham Prep was looking into the history of the school. I don't think that really had been done, and search engines had just been developed. And I used to smoke a lot of cigars and do the crossword puzzle on Sunday mornings, Saturday mornings in my room. And I decided to give up cigars and do research on the internet, and I found 1,000 lost, quote unquote, Fordham Prep alumni. As they would all say to me, I wasn't lost, you just didn't know where I was. But we tracked them down, and they've gotten more and more involved in the school. And I began to find out what Fordham Prep alumni were doing. When I was president of the school, we had the chief counsels of IBM, International Paper, and Ernst & Young. We had the presidents of John Jay, Quinnipiac, and Babson. We had deans and professors at major colleges all around the country. And when we redid the library, we asked all of those professors to send us the books they had written. And they're still in the library upstairs, inspiring the students who go to the prep today. But in addition to these great professional accomplishments, the Fordham Prep alumni are extraordinarily generous and supportive. And I want to thank all of you gathered here tonight from the bottom of my heart for the encouragement and support that you've given to Cristo Rey New York High School. We would not be the school that we are today without the greatness of the Fordham Prep alumni. So thank you very much from the 770 students, all from low-income families in New York City who've graduated from Cristo Rey New York High School, and for those who will continue to graduate in the future. May God continue to bless Fordham Prep, its great alumni body, and all of your families, and may you all have a blessed Thanksgiving. God bless you, and thank you very much for this honor.
Father Deveron, members of the board, that concludes the nominating committee's role in the evening, and I want to thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mike. Father Deveron now has some remarks and will lead us in a closing prayer. Father Deveron.
Let's give it up for Mike Stanton and the committee. What a great job. What a fantastic class of Hall of Honor nominees we had this evening. Thank you. So I'd like to conclude with a prayer. Let's pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Almighty God, you have inspired us this evening in the stories of the lives of these honorees, women and men who have dedicated the gifts and blessings you have bestowed upon them in service to their neighbors. We are grateful for the ways in which you labor in the Fordham Prep community, within the hearts and the lives of our students, alumni, faculty, parents, and leaders, within the history of 9 generations of young men who have studied, learned, and grown through faith, scholarship, and service to become men for others devoted to your greater honor and glory. As we prepare to celebrate Thanksgiving, form in each of us grateful hearts, hearts more eager to recognize you, the source of all goodness, more ready to labor generously with you, and more deeply moved to follow your Son, Jesus. May this modus of gratitude guide us along our pilgrim path, which leads to your everlasting banquet. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. St. Ignatius Loyola, have a great evening. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here tonight.